The Kia Tasman 4x4 Ute has just been awarded 5 stars on safety by ANCAP, the Australasian New Car Assessment Program. But perversely enough, and this is buried right up the RS of their release, not all Tasmans are 5-star. In the interest of you making an informed decision about the safety of the vehicle that you ultimately buy and perhaps put your colleagues or family in, let us drill down into that and make sense of this mess. I'm John Cadogan from AutoExpert.com.au. New cars cheap, but Australia only. Website. Card. Okay, so let's put a few pegs in the ground. ANCAP is a private, non-regulatory, but heavily taxpayer-funded entity responsible for one thing, which is the administration of safety ratings on vehicles. Because they're non-regulatory, they have no teeth, no nuts, okay? They're not a government agency. They can't stop vehicles being sold here. You can sell a 0-star vehicle here as long as it meets the very easy to pass crash compliance tests involved in the Australian Design Rule certification process, okay? So that's kind of how this works. ANCAP ratings are, kind of optional, except in the fleet domain, because most government and big business fleets have a policy of 5-star only. And I know why they came at that policy, but it's probably time for them all to sit down and have a little meeting to decide that 4 stars is good enough, because the ratings have evolved over time, and actually getting 4 stars is still pretty excellent, okay? That's the context. Now, the headline of this release, which came out at 11 a.m. today, is Tasman rises. Kia's first Ute earns top safety rating in competitive field. So this paints a picture, I think, in the head of a reasonable person who thinks that the Tasman is really, really safe and that 5-star pertains to it as a vehicle across the board. And I'd say 2 things in the public interest, right? It is very safe, objectively very safe. It's hard to get 5 stars. It's hard to pass those tests. It's expensive to pass those tests. And because the Tasman is not sold in Europe, as I understand it, the responsibility for doing the tests fell to ANCAP. And that means that they would have gone to Kia and conscripted Kia's assistance, supplying the vehicles and possibly also paying for NADA-registered crash mayhem facilities like Crash Lab to actually do the testing, which is expensive. Like, trashing the vehicles is expensive, hiring the facilities is expensive, okay? I'm not implying that there's anything untoward about this. I'm saying that that's probably how it happened. It's definitely in Kia's interests to get a 5-star rating for the Tasman because, let's be kind, this is a pretty aesthetically challenging vehicle, and I suspect that's going to hurt its ability to be sold to private punters like us. Some people will not be able to bridge the gap from here to how it looks. Whereas fleet managers, they're bean counters. They don't give a toss how it looks. They care about the price and the performance and the safety rating. And fleets do have a 5-star only policy generally. Okay, so 5-star is critically important to Kia's commercial success plan for the Tasman. Can't be successful without 5-star. And I'm very happy that it is 5-star for fleets. We'll get to the why of that. Anyway, we'll drill down into the release because I want to decompile that so you can separate the spin from the substance of all of this stuff, because I think ANCAP is really off its meds apropos of some of the things they say. And it's just my personal opinion, but to me the facts do not substantiate what was said in this release.
This report is sponsored by NordVPN. Get a mega discount plus 4 extra months of Nord for free now in my exclusive deal. Go to nordvpn.com/AEJC. Online security threats are everywhere, but you don't have to be the next victim. That's where NordVPN comes in, locking everything down securely in the background. Go to nordvpn.com/AEJC now. Every 2-year NordVPN plan receives that mega discount with the 4 free months and a bonus Amazon gift card on the Plus and Complete Nord packages for a limited time only. nordvpn.com/AEJC. Using NordVPN is easy. Just subscribe, download the app and connect. 1 click later, your IP address is shielded and your traffic is encrypted across as many as 6 of your devices. Nord is the fastest VPN on the planet. It costs only about as much as a single cup of coffee every month to keep your data, your identity, and your devices secure. Masking your location means you'll be able to access content that might be blocked where you live. Plus, you can continue to watch your favourite content when you travel. Boost your online security at nordvpn.com/AEJC now. Get that mega discount, enjoy those extra 4 months, plus the free Amazon gift card with the Plus and Complete packages for a limited time. It's all totally risk-free with Nord's rock-solid 30-day money-back guarantee. It's easy to stay safe online. Visit nordvpn.com/AEJC now.
They say, quote, the highly anticipated Kia Tasman dual cab utility has achieved the maximum 5-star ANCAP safety rating following independent testing and assessment against ANCAP's 2023 to 2025 criteria. Point number 1, highly anticipated by whom? Exactly. I'm not seeing an order bank over the horizon for Tasman in the way that I was seeing it for the BYD Shark 6. Okay? I think Tasman is a hard sell because it does have some nice features, like it's got a nice interior, it's got a big tray, it's got a 1,000 kilo plus carrying capacity if you want that, and if you want a novated lease which is capped at 1,000 kilos worth of payload, then you can specify getting one with a payload less than 1,000. So they're flexible like that, which is lovely. I'm sure the ride and handling is excellent because they tuned it in Australia using Graham Gambold, who is a Jedi, #respect, and he would not do a bad job. He can't do a bad job. His mediocre job would be beyond excellent compared with anyone else's, in my estimation. So I'm sure it'll be good at that. My problem with Tasman is that there's nothing really compelling about it. The powertrain is like, yeah, average kind of thing. You know, I'm sure it's decent, but there's nothing compelling about it, which is why I'm not seeing an order bank stretching to infinity and beyond, right? And for this reason, I'd suggest that, you know, highly anticipated by frickin' whom? Anyway, as they go on and say, as one of the most anticipated entrants into the Australian market, again, anticipated by whom? And the first ute for the brand, the Kia Tasman has delivered strong safety outcomes across all key areas of assessment: adult occupant protection, child occupant protection, vulnerable road user protection, and safety assist. So that's how the 5-star system works, okay? There are these 4 pillars, basically adult occupants and child occupants, meaning how does it go in a crash, protecting people. And then they got vulnerable road users, like if you hit a pedestrian, which pro tip you should strive not to do, or a cyclist, then how do they go? And then you've got safety assistance, which is ADAS, the most annoying technology ever in a modern car, okay? They really are off their meds on that, but they're the 4 pillars, and this is like a self-limiting system, whereas the minimum score in one of those pillars defines the rating for the rest. For example, you could crash really, really well and protect adults and children really, really well, but do really shit on ADAS, get 3 stars on ADAS, 5 stars for everything else, and your car will be 3 stars. That's how this works, okay? So yay, Tasman did really well in all 4 areas and gets 5 stars. It's hard to do that 2 thumbs up, okay? I am sure that on objective criteria, this is a very safe vehicle to be in or around in our road system. I'm not taking anything away from that, but not all of them are 5 stars, and we are getting to that, okay? They go on and say that this rating comes at a time when utes continue to dominate the Australian and New Zealand car markets. Now, I'm not going to comment on Sheepshagistan because I can't be asked doing the research. It's not relevant to us here. But I'd have to say that utes do not dominate the Australian new car market. They just don't, okay? This is objectively true. 80-something thousand cars, 82,000 cars so far this year in Australia. This is passenger cars, okay, versus 113,000 last year. Utes are about 118,000 vehicles being sold so far this year. 90% of those are 4x4s, incidentally, versus 122,000 last year, same time last year. So the ute market is actually contracting at the moment, and it doesn't dominate anyway because there's about 118,000 sales so far versus 366,000 SUVs. So the dominant segment in the Australian market, which I'd frickin' expect ANCAP to know, is SUVs, not utes. So that is just factually flat out incorrect and misrepresentative. I'm not accusing them of lying because I don't think they're intentional about it. I just think they wouldn't know. It's just crazy, okay? New car sales data, they say, published by TW Mob for the month of June 2025 revealed 4 of the 5 top-selling vehicles sold in Australia were dual-cab utes. Big frickin' deal. That doesn't mean utes dominate the market. It means 4 utes are really popular. Christ. With light commercial vehicles accounting for more than 1 in 4 new vehicles sold, 25.3%. SUVs are bigger. They're substantially bigger. They're 3 times bigger than utes. Get it right. How hard is this? The 4 top-selling utes, the Ranger, Hilux, D-Max and BYD Shark 6, all hold 5-star ANCAP safety ratings. Yeah, they do, but Hilux's was 2019, which was 2 iterations of the ANCAP scoring system ago, and therefore not really or at all comparable with the rest of those utes. It's just not. And this is how it is when you play tennis without the net, okay? The Hilux can be 5-star, although if you tested it today, it might be really lucky to get 3, you know? Now, this is a quote from the volleyball ref, Ms. Horweg, who runs ANCAP. She is a volleyball ref and a lawyer, so just right for running a vehicle with a focus on such a technically demanding area, I'd suggest. Quote, the popularity of utes among consumers continues to rise. No, it doesn't. The ute market has contracted so far this year. It's either stagnant or slightly less than it was, depending on how you define noise, okay? But it's not continuing to rise. It's flat to slightly below last year. Okay, so that's just not accurate as far as I see the market and as far as TW represents it, okay? Given the time spent on the road, both as commercial workhorses and family transport, it is important that models in this high-volume segment offer robust levels of safety. Yeah, that's true, okay? But the family thing which she has mentioned there, very important, right? Very important because it's the family-oriented utes which are not 5-star, perversely enough. We're getting to that. ANCAP goes on and says, the Kia Tasman performed well across the range of crash protection and collision avoidance tests. Well done. Notable high scores denoting low risk of injury were recorded for each of the adult and child dummy occupants in the frontal offset crash test. That simulates a clipping head-on collision which is very difficult to pass, and it's admirable to get a high score there. So if my other thumb was not going to drop the release, both of them would be up. Well done there, Kia. This assessment evaluates the, equally impressive, they say, it was the moderately low crash compatibility risk. This assessment evaluates the risk the test vehicle poses to potential crash partner vehicles and their occupants. This means if a Tasman slams into a frickin' Yaris, it does a pretty good job mitigating the crash for the occupants of the Yaris, okay? So that's admirable as well, but pro tip, Isaac Newton and I would prefer to be in the Tasman in that collision, if you don't mind. And I'd suggest that you should join us there if that option is available to you also, because, yeah, you can do a good job with compatibility, but it's always better to be in the bigger, heavier vehicle, which is higher up. Always better. This assessment evaluates the risk the test vehicle poses to potential crash partner vehicles and their occupants. For a vehicle of its size and mass, the Tasman performed very well. Yeah, it did, but the family-oriented one's not going to go as well. That's kind of important to know there as well, and they're the ones that are not 5-star, okay? A concern was noted in the full-width frontal crash test where the pelvis of the driver dummy slipped beneath the lap section of the seatbelt. A penalty was applied for that. Okay, that was a glitch in the testing, so still 5-star. Ms. Horwig again now, quote, fleet buyers and potential Tasman customers across the country have been eagerly awaiting the Tasman safety rating, and this 5-star result will be welcome news. Yeah, well, I guess it will for the vehicles that are actually 5-star, and not so much for the vehicles that aren't, although I suspect they're reasonably safe, but how the fuck would we know? There's that. With such strong market presence and consumer demand, it is pleasing to see manufacturers continuing to prioritise safety in this segment. They all want 5 stars to sell their vehicles to fleets because otherwise many utes would be unprofitable. And Tasman is the poster boy for the imperative to sell to fleets, right? Ms. Horwig again now, volleyball reffing like it's 1999. The dual cab shopping list is already healthy and we expect to see it grow further with other new contenders entering the market in coming months. Consumers and fleets should check the ANCAP website regularly to ensure they have all the information they need to make an informed, safe purchasing decision. Yeah, and if you weren't playing tennis without the net, I'd suggest, personal opinion, it would be even better for consumers because it's so easy to win without the net. Every shot is a frickin' winner, and here's why. Quote, this is ANCAP, not Ms. Horwig. With the exception of the X-Line and X-Line Pro, the 5-star rating for the Kia Tasman applies to 4x4 dual cab variants currently on sale. So that would be the lower end of the market, S, SX and SX Plus. These are the ones that fleets will buy, obviously, but the ones that people like you or I might buy, X-Line and X Pro, no 5-star for them, dude. The 5-star rating for the Kia Tasman applies to 4x4 dual cab variants currently on sale, X-Line and X-Line Pro variants, as well as 4x2 rear-wheel drive and upcoming single cab and dual cab chassis variants have not been assessed by ANCAP and are unrated. Okay, this is the bit that's really important to understand, all right? Now, first up, in ANCAP's release, they've jammed this table in. I'll put it up on the screen so you can look at it. And there's a few anomalies here, all right? Like, you'll note that, for example, Mitsubishi Triton gets one of the lowest scores for safety assistance technology, but it's got all the shit, and it happens to be one of the most annoying vehicles. So that seems weird to me, right? The other thing is that there are minor discrepancies between the Ford Ranger and the Volkswagen Amarok, and also between the Isuzu D-Max and the She-Max or BT50 from Mazda. And that seems really weird to me because except for the hair and makeup, these vehicles are freaking identical. Okay, they're all 5 stars, but they get different scores. And join me the dots there, Batman, because I'm not seeing that from the point of view of relevance. And the other thing on the table, of course, is that Hilux gets this score of 96 for adult occupant protection, which a layperson would look at that table and say, that freaking Hilux, dude, it's a tank. It protects me like no other ute. Except understanding how this works, the complexity of it, means that because the Hilux was tested in 2019, it was tested to a whole bunch of tests that were just easier to pass, and therefore it got a higher rating. I'd suggest that it would not get anything like the same rating if it were tested today. And if memory serves, Toyota moved heaven and earth to test a whole bunch of vehicles in approximately that time frame because they knew that the tests were going to get harder to pass the next year, and therefore they wanted to get everything through to a lower standard, because this is what goes on in the background when you play tennis without the fucking net, okay? You don't get a good result for consumers. Personal opinion, I would freaking argue. Okay, the other thing is here that the Nissan Navara is unrated. It sells 10,000 a year, and they haven't tested it for 10 fucking years. This is not what would happen in a regulatory environment. This is what happens in a no-net tennis environment. The 10,000 people who buy a Navara every year, they don't get good information about their choice, but they can go to the ANCAP website and see that previously it was a 5-star vehicle and it really hasn't changed. So, hey, I drilled down into exactly why the X-Line and the X Pro were unrated by ANCAP with the Tasman. Okay, I rang a senior executive at Kia and I asked him, and I want to represent this fairly, okay? And what I'm going to say here is that I have no doubt that the X-Line and X Pro versions of the Tasman are spectacularly safe vehicles to be in. But we have a rating system for a reason, okay? These vehicles, Kia would argue, are oriented towards off-road use, and they have a different bumper design. These are the top 2 models, the X-Line and the X Pro. They also have more fruit, and they are designed to appeal to private buyers, families, okay? So I talk mainly to people in this environment. You're most likely a private buyer of a vehicle or a private punter who is just interested in vehicles. And therefore, if you were interested in a ute and considering a Tasman, you would probably be shopping up the more expensive end of the market with X-Line and X Pro. And the different bumper design of this vehicle means that it affects things like vulnerable road user protection, which is one of the 4 pillars of the ANCAP safety ratings. It also affects the compliance that Ms. Horweg and ANCAP gushed about the Tasman having. Plus this super expensive test, which is the MPDB test. I think I got that right. The Movable Progressive Deformable Barrier Test, which is super complex to set up, really expensive to run, and requires the world's most expensive crash test dummy, which is called Thor, although it has absolutely no similarity to the Marvel superhero. Okay, so you need all of this expensive shit to do this test. And what this means is Kia probably kicked the tin for all of the testing for the Tasman. They probably argued the toss with ANCAP that these vehicles, X-Line and X Pro, are off-road oriented and therefore can somehow step out of the rubric for ANCAP certification as 5-star. They can do that legitimately because ANCAP has a set of rules that might be functionally insane, but there are a set of rules, and I'm not alleging that there's any malfeasance taken place whatsoever. I'm suggesting that this is, to an extent, what tennis without the net looks like, because families, in my estimation, are being done a bit of a disservice here. The vehicle's pretty safe, but there's no 5-star for it, because on the balance of probability, Kia would have had to supply another car and the test facilities and the analysis to do the vulnerable road user shit and the crash compliance stuff, as well as that super expensive Thor dummy using MP DB test to prove perhaps that the 2 top spec vehicles are 4-star. I don't know that they're necessarily 4-star, but why else would you refrain from doing it? Like, you got to look at what's the benefit and what's the risk, because if you stump up all of the extra cash and you do all of this extra testing and you define a 4-star result for these top 2 variants, that looks terrible. Whereas if you can just say, they're unrated, and you bury it down the back of the release because ANCAP and Kia cooperatively arrived at this determination. And again, I'm not suggesting that this is corrupt. I'm just suggesting that this is a set of rules made for tennis without a net, okay? 4 stars, in my estimation, if that would have been the outcome, is fine. But no information is a public disservice. And ANCAP is publicly funded. We are all kicking the tin for ANCAP, and I'd suggest that there is therefore an obligation on that agency to do the absolute best for consumers, private punters like you and me, not just expedite a good result for the fleets. And it is a good result for the fleets. It's a legitimately strong result for fleets, and Tasman is a super safe car for fleet purchasing. I'm not taking anything away from that. I'm also saying that Tasman is legitimately sufficiently safe for private purchases. It's better than sufficiently safe. It's probably safer than a frickin' Hilux. And if we had a net, we'd know for sure. Or a Navara, right? What I'm saying is that these bullshit protocols with their endless maze of torturous rules and bylaws, and if this, we can do that, and if that's off-road, then we can step this out of here and this and that, and Navara's unrated and Hilux is 5-star, but from 2019, so you can make an informed safety decision, is such horse shit. This should be much clearer. This should say the top 2 specs of Tasman are a little bit less safe in crash compliance when the big vehicle hits the small vehicle, kind of just like bolting a bull bar to any other ute, I'd suggest. It's a little bit less safe if you run into a pedestrian, but pro tip, drive really safely, pay attention, don't hit fucking cyclists or pedestrians, and that's not much of an issue then. And if it's a little bit worse on the movable progressive deformable barrier test, then okay, but it's still probably better than a freaking Hilux or a Navara. Wouldn't it be lovely if we had a system where it could just spell out at any point in time the relative safety of the top contenders in any category, because that really would be your tax dollars doing really good work, helping consumers and businesses, government, fleet buyers, whatever, purchase the right vehicle to do the job with safety as one of those important criteria. And I would suggest in the strongest possible terms that this latest result is not a disaster for Tasman at all. It's a really safe vehicle. It's just a victory for misinformation.